everyone, my name is Lori and I want to welcome you back to BabyNet, Navigating Experiences Together. I'm excited to once again be connecting with you this week. And I hope that you were able to try our weekly challenge last week, which was to find new opportunities to engage with your baby in serve and return interactions. In today's segment, I'm going to be discussing sleeping and crying. I'll talk to you about what to expect with your baby's sleep and how to help establish routines. I'll discuss some crying patterns and what to do if your baby can't stop crying. And I'll finish off with our question of the week and our weekly challenge. All right, let's get started today with our quote of the week, which is, "A baby will make love stronger, days shorter, nights longer, your bank account smaller, home happier, clothes a little bit shabbier, the past forgotten, and a future worth living for." And this quote is from an anonymous author. And I hope this quote helps to give you maybe a little bit of a positive perspective when you're having some of those sleepless nights and if your baby can't stop crying. All right, so first of all, we're going to talk about babies who are newborn to 6 months old. So what should we expect from our baby's sleep at that age? So babies have sleep patterns that are quite different from older children and from adults. Their stomachs can only hold a small amount of milk, so they wake and feed very often. Newborns sleep an average of about 1 to 3 hours a night, and that includes day and night, so 1 to 3 hours at a time, day and night, and this is completely normal. And as they get older, they will sleep for longer periods of time, so I do want to reassure you with that. So young babies typically sleep about 14 to 17 hours a day for the first 3 months, and then about 12 to 16 hours a day for 4 to 12 months old. And they sleep about 3 to 4 hours at a time, and sometimes that can be as little as about 2 hours at a time. So baby's sleep pattern will continue on this way until they are about 5 to 6 months old. They may start sleeping a little bit longer at a time at around 3 months old, but most babies aren't quite ready to sleep longer periods of time at night until they're about 6 months old, and even then it will only be for about 5 to 6 hours at a time. So let your baby eat and sleep when they need to. They'll develop their own eating and sleeping patterns. So you don't need to wake them to feed as long as they are healthy and gaining weight and growing, unless you've been instructed to do so by your healthcare provider. By understanding and responding to your baby's sleeping and waking cues, you can help learn their good sleeping habits early. So although your babies are going to be waking to be fed during the night, it's not too early to start letting them know and to start having them learn the difference between day and night. So what are a few things that we can do to help our babies learn the difference between day and night? Because if we can help them learn the difference, it helps them learn that nighttime is for sleeping. So during the day, some things that you could try would be to keep your home well lit, keep your curtains open, keep the home bright. Don't worry about noises such as your dishwasher, running your vacuum, playing music, those kinds of things, and play actively. It's a time for active play during the day. During the night, however, it's a good idea if you can keep your lights off, keep them dim, reduce noises, so it's not a good time maybe to be running the dishwasher, and keep your feeding times quiet and your voices low. Most babies feel secure when they have a similar routine every day. However, if you have a very strict routine, sometimes this doesn't work well either, as their needs for food and sleep can change often from day to day. So following your baby's lead for feeding and playing times and sleeping, but try to have a regular routine around your baby's care. So whether that's bathing or playtime, those kinds of things. And what about learning to fall asleep on their own? So after the first few months, put your baby to bed when they're feeling drowsy, but they're still awake whenever you can. So cuddle, feed your baby, and then bring them close to sleep, but do put them down if you can into their own crib. And this will help them learn to fall asleep on their own. Give your baby a chance to fall asleep in their crib or in their bassinet whenever possible. So babies, when they learn to go to sleep and wake in the same place, they learn that this is where they will go to sleep. And this helps them learn how to get back to sleep and how to fall asleep as they get a little bit older. And if they do happen to wake up during the night, this is important. So I will talk more about self-soothing for older babies in a few minutes. All right, so let's turn our attention now to babies who are a little bit older, so that 6 to 12 month age range. So for 6 to 12 months, babies will have a more predictable sleep patterns. They'll sleep about 12 to 16 hours a day, as I said before, including those naps though, for that healthy growth and development. Some babies will still wake up in the night to feed, and some, they're all different. Some may nap several times a day, but maybe have a little bit more solid sleep at night, while others will have fewer naps during the day. As your baby gets older, the number of hours they sleep at night will gradually increase. So look for the average amount that your baby will sleep within that 24-hour period. For 6-month-old babies, they're usually able to sleep for a bit longer stretches at night, so that might get up to that 5 to 8 hours a night, and they will still have 2 to 3 naps during the day. But for 12-month-old babies, this changes, so they usually have more consistent bedtimes and more consistent wake-up times, and they'll nap a little bit less, so about 1 to 2 hours once or twice a day. So remember to put your baby on their back when they're going to sleep. If they roll over, that's fine. You don't need to worry about moving them back. And if you want to find out about more safe sleep in your baby's first year, it's a good idea if you go to the Healthy Parents, healthychildren.ca website, or consult with your public health nurse at your public health care center regarding safe sleep. So your baby's sleep patterns will change as they grow, and even after your baby starts to sleep more at night, there may be times when they have troubles getting back to sleep or going to sleep because they could be teething, they could be sick, they could be going through a growth spurt, they might be in that period of development where they're having separation anxiety. They've maybe learned a new skill, like rolling over or pulling themselves up to stand. Or there's a change in your family's routine, such as traveling, holidays, or a new work schedule. So it may take a few days or weeks to get your baby's sleep schedule back on track if they're going through one of these phases. But don't worry, if you're patient, if you're continue with your comforting and you're consistent with your baby, these things will get back on track for you for sure. So what about helping your older baby develop those healthy sleep routines? So again, I just mentioned about putting your baby on their back when they're drowsy, but maybe not yet fully asleep, and this helps them connect going to sleep with their crib. So every baby is different when it comes to sleep. Some, they'll drop right off to sleep as soon as you put them into their crib, whereas others may fuss and cry. But you don't need to rush in every time your baby cries. If you hear that their fussing is starting to slow, it's gradually taping off, then that's great. So your baby is simply learning to settle themselves or self-soothe, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And like all learning, this will take time. And as your baby explores and learns to play more, they may become more interested in their surroundings. So don't be surprised if they're going to sleep, but just try to be more consistent and patient. It may take some time, but your baby will learn to go to sleep on their own. However, if your baby's cries are getting louder and more frantic, it means that they probably aren't able to settle themselves in that moment and they may need your help. So this could be things, for example, they might be going through a growth spurt, so they may need to feed. This can typically last maybe just a few days. You might need to go in, gently stroke, maybe pat their leg, their tummy, their cheek. Things like keeping your hand on them, maybe sing a soft tune, maybe hum. You can talk quietly to your baby. You can slowly use a lighter touch with your hand, just sort of slowly ease off. Calmly stroking or patting your baby rather than picking them up, and if they move around or seem to be waking up. Some older babies will settle once you leave the room, and give them a few minutes to try settling on their own. But if you're concerned about your baby's sleep and not getting enough sleep, you may be wondering about sleep training. This may be something that you've heard about. So what is sleep training? Sleep training is a term that's used for a variety of methods that can help your baby to fall asleep and to stay asleep. But just so that you know, sleep training does come in many different forms. Some of them are universal, which means they're available to everyone at no cost. However, some do have a cost, so you just have to check that out. The most important thing is that no matter what you choose, you need to feel comfortable about what's right for you and what's right for your baby and for your family. And it's very important to note that if you do have concerns about your baby's sleep or your sleep and how it can be affecting your own health, your family's well-being, then you contact your primary healthcare provider and talk about any specific real sleep concerns that you may have. So what would be some extra tips? I'm going to provide you hopefully with some extra tips here in terms of helping your baby to develop that healthy sleep routine. So when you follow a regular bedtime routine every night, your baby does learn what the signs and signals are of bedtime, and they come to know what to expect. So bedtime routines work best if they happen before your baby is showing those real signs of being tired. So if you wait until your baby is tired, they may become overtired, and an overtired baby can be very, very tough to settle. They can have trouble falling asleep and staying asleep. So it's good if you kind of start your bedtime routine before you see those signs of tiredness. So what are some things that you can do? So an example of a bedtime routine that you could follow would be that you would start with having a warm bath. Then it would be maybe time for some pajamas. I know for some families they might have a infant massage time in between there. Then it might be time to clean their gums, clean their teeth. Then it's time to maybe snuggle, have a song or a story, and this is where you could throw some variety into your routine. So maybe you would change up the book, change up the song that you would sing. And then you can put your baby down in their crib. So again, when they're drowsy but still awake, and this helps them to learn, again, that their crib is the place where they go to sleep. Then you can say a warm good night and then try to have them settle on their own. So that's an example of a routine that you might want to try. And just a note too about breastfeeding. So one thing that they say to try is to try to avoid breastfeeding or feeding your baby every time they go to sleep. This helps them to learn the difference, learn that sleeping and feeding don't always have to go together. So taking your baby off the breast or off the bottle before it's empty and before they're fully asleep, and then you can have that cuddle and then settle them into their crib. That's just another idea that you can try. And then I'd like to talk to you now a little bit more. I'd mentioned about self-soothing. So what is self-soothing? So self-soothing is really a way to help your baby get to sleep and get back to sleep if and when they wake during the night. It can also help them soothe themselves at other times that they might be fussy. So with time, your baby can learn to help self-soothe themselves. So what are some signs that you'll see if your baby is learning to self-soothe? So they might make those sucking sounds or suck on their fingers, their thumb, or their soother. They might rub the edge of their blanket with their fingers. They might stare at one spot or an object in their room for a few minutes before closing their eyes. They may make or mimic some soft humming sounds that you could be making. They might learn that for themselves. They might mimic that. And as older baby, for several weeks, if they learn how to self-soothe, it's an important skill for them to learn. So if it takes a couple of weeks, that's great. So just keep trying. I want to encourage you. It could take some time. However, if they begin to fuss and make sounds when they're sleeping, just wait at those few minutes, as I said before. See if they can settle down on their own, and then perhaps don't go in and to your baby until they're fully awake. So teaching your baby to self-soothe is not meant to replace the loving attention and the care that you give to their needs. However, self-soothing is simply a way to help them fall asleep and learn how to sleep as they move through the sleep stages at night. So if they have those times where they have those little bit of waking, it can just help them to fall back asleep on their own. And hopefully you can find that to be a helpful tip. So I'd like to turn our attention now towards the topic of crying. So babies cry to communicate when they're hungry, when they're wet, when they're too warm, when they're too cold, when they're feeling lonely and otherwise uncomfortable. When you respond promptly to those cries, you help your baby to feel confident and to feel safe. After your baby's need is met, crying usually stops. Letting a newborn cry it out usually makes the situation worse and the crying becomes more intense. It's often harder and it takes longer to calm an extremely upset baby than one who has just started to cry. So what are crying patterns in babies? What do they look like? So babies cry most during the first 4 months of life. Most babies have a fussy time during the day, and that's often in the late afternoon or early evening. And this is because they've had a full day. They're trying to release that tension after a full day of activity, and they've had a full day of stimulation. So this can typically be a fussy time for babies. These episodes can last up to about 2 to 3 hours a day. And this just means that during this time, your baby needs extra attention. So do realize that your baby may continue to cry no matter how much comfort you do give them. And although this behavior is very normal, it can be very stressful for you, especially when you're already feeling perhaps overwhelmed. But if you can identify a pattern, it may help you to hold your baby before that anticipated crying period can begin. So the average amount of time that a baby cries peaks at around 6 to 8 weeks of age, and it will gradually decrease. These crying spells will shorten as your baby's nervous system matures and as you become better able to meet and to recognize your newborn's needs. So around 2 to 4 months, the crying will change more, the crying will lessen, and it will depend. You'll be able to recognize those cries depending on what your baby's need is. But there is an extreme form of crying, which some of you may be familiar with, and this extreme type of crying in babies is typically around between 3 weeks and 3 months of age, and it's called colic, which I'm sure you've heard of. So although it can be very upsetting for parents and for caregivers, colic is normal for some babies. Caregivers are not to blame. So it's hard for a baby with colic to stop crying after that episode has begun, despite your attempts to soothe and console your baby. It's very common to feel a bit scared or frustrated when you can't get your baby to stop crying. Remember, however, that colic is normal and it is temporary. This phase will pass. Your baby will grow out of it. Colic is not caused by pain or illness. However, if you do think that your baby is crying due to those reasons, then again, it's very important that you call your doctor when this does happen. So what are some things that you can do when you're in the middle of coping with this difficult situation? What are some extra tips that I could provide you if you find yourself in these tough crying spells? So if you've already ruled out that your baby isn't hungry, they're not gassy, maybe they need to be burped, maybe they need a diaper change, maybe they're simply overtired. So if you've kind of ruled out all of those things, some other ideas that I could give you would be to offer your baby something to suck on. So whether that's your finger, a cool wet cloth, a soft rubbery chew, something like that. Snuggling with your baby, so doing some of that deep breathing while holding your baby on your chest. Sometimes the rhythm of your own breathing can be quite soothing. Swaddling your baby, so giving them that feeling of warmth, of closeness. For some people, they find baby carrying can be quite helpful. For some babies, a gentle rhythmic movement with soft music can help your babies to feel secure. Try different kinds of music. One never knows what could be the secret here. Singing while you hold your baby close to your chest. Again, that vibration that they hear, even our own voices can be quite calming to our baby. They're familiar to them. You can try something like white noise from a fan, from a vacuum, or a white noise machine. Fresh air, that could be maybe going outside. For some babies, it can be that calm, cool breeze can be what can be very helpful. Warm water in a bath, so you can certainly try a bath. Some babies don't like the bath, but other babies really do, so you could certainly see if the warm bath can help, or trying holding your baby in the shower, having that warm water running over. Movement while holding your baby, so again, having them in that carrier, walking, maybe an exercise ball can help. Rocking chairs can be quite helpful. Massaging your baby with warm hands and that predictable motion can help our babies with breathing and their heart rates. So those are some of the extra tips that I could give you if you do find yourself in one of these difficult crying situations. So I'd like to turn our attention now towards our question of the week, and this question does center around crying. So the question is, I have heard that if I'm feeling stressed and anxious, that my baby can pick up on these emotions and my baby can be harder to settle. Is this true, and what can I do to prevent it? So I'd like to say that yes, our babies can pick up sometimes on our emotional distress, and it can make it harder for us to soothe our babies. So that's why it's really, really important that we take those moments to calm ourselves first, so that we can turn and look after our babies kind of in a more calming manner, and that way that will help it will help soothe our babies in the long run. So what are some extra things that you can do if you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, if your baby is in one of these colic phases or in a crying phase? So if you're home on your own, it's important that you find a safe space for your baby. So that's quite likely their crib. Take a moment to leave the room, maybe do some deep breathing, have a quick cup of tea, something that will calm and soothe you in that moment, something that you can do to recenter yourself so that you can go back and engage with your baby. Maybe you need to call someone. Just hearing the voice on the other end of the phone or a FaceTime call of a loved one, of a friend. Speaking or venting to someone, even if you have a partner at home, maybe talking to them. Someone that can listen to you, that can alleviate your own fears and your worries. Another idea is to have someone else to take over for a while. And again, I know it's a little bit tougher right now. We're not able to have friends and family visit as much as we could. But if you do have another adult in the home, have them take over for a while so that you can even just get out, maybe go for a walk, have a bath, have a piece of chocolate, have a piece of something that you enjoy, and then just take a few moments to breathe, and then go back to your baby when you're feeling recharged. Maybe putting on some music for yourself. Try wearing headphones so you can hear that music so that it minimizes the sounds of your baby crying while you continue to hold and rock your baby. Remind yourself that this crying it is a way for your baby to relieve their stress, and your baby just need to get that stress out, and that's okay. So that's another thing that you can do to remind yourself. And maybe try writing down, this is another idea that I read, try writing down 5 best things about your baby and 5 best things about yourself, 5 great things about your own parenting. What are the 5 best things that you found from today? What are some things that you can do so that when you are able to calm yourself down, then you're able to go back and interact with your baby, and your baby will feed off of that positive energy, and hopefully it will help them to calm themselves. So I'd like to move now to our weekly challenge. So we all know that sometimes babies can't stop crying no matter what you do. And when this happens, feeling frustrated is completely normal, and having a plan to cope with that crying can really help. So I'd like to challenge you this week. There's a website that I gave you last week, but it will be listed here again for you, and it's the myhealth.alberta.ca website. And on this website there's something called the crying plan. And this crying plan is a great idea to just have handy if you're in the middle of one of those moments of stress. Take a look, have this plan filled out and ready to go. And it's something that you might find to be quite helpful for yourself, and if you have a partner at home. So some elements of this crying plan include, on the one side, they have tips to help you soothe your baby. So again, those ideas, I won't review them here, but the ideas that I gave you a few minutes ago on some things you can do to soothe your baby, they've got all of those written out for you. And then they give you some blank spaces, some other ideas that you might have, ways that you are able to soothe your baby. And then on the other side of the crying plan are ways to calm yourself. So again, ideas that I just gave you are listed out there for you. And again, they give you some blank spaces so that you can write some other ideas for yourself. You can personalize this plan for you. They have some numbers that you're able to call 24 hours a day. So if you do really feel like you're very, very stressed and you do need to reach out and talk to someone for that extra bit of support, there's some numbers listed there for you that are 24-hour-a-day phone numbers. And then they also have, again, blank spaces for you to personalize the plan, some numbers that you can call. So who are some friends, some family that you can reach out to if you're just really needing that extra support. So I would challenge you this week, if you're able to go to that website, download this, print it off, fill it out, and then have it somewhere handy for yourself and for your partner, so that if you are in the middle of these distressing times with your baby, with crying, and you're trying to cope, this would be an extra tool, an extra resource for you in those moments. So that's what I had for you this week. I do hope that you were able to take away some helpful tips for yourself today in regards to your baby's sleep and for crying. And I'd like to remind you again, if you have any questions or concerns, that Family Futures, our contact information will be up at the end of this video, so you can contact us here. And I'd also like to remind you that in my next video, I will be discussing ages and stages of baby's development in their first year. And just to remind you too, to check out our YouTube channel again, as we do have updated content being added continually, so there's lots of interesting, fun, informative information and content there for you. So I'd like to say farewell. I hope that you have a good week. I hope that you're able to enjoy the week, stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.